Hello children, today we will talk about the 1905 revolutions. The 1905 revolutions is known as the most turbulent time in Russia because most of the crisis which happens during the periods of 1905, that is why it is known as the most turbulent time in Russia. So my dear children, in Russia we see the Tsar Nicholas II who is ruling in Russia, and he was the autocratic ruler and he was not subject to parliaments. He was not a constitutional monarchy. He was having unlimited powers in Russia, but during the beginning of the 20th centuries we see the social democrats as well as the revolutionaries. They were trying to add the autocratic systems. They were trying to bring a changes in the society. They were trying to bring a new systems in the society. They were trying to bring the parliamentary governments in the society. So these social democrats as well as these socialist revolutionaries, they wanted to have a constitutions in 1905 because already I have told you that before 1905 in Russia, Tsar Nicholas II was ruling there and he was not subject to parliament or no constitutions was there. That is the reasons we see the social democrats as well as the socialist revolutionaries, by seeing the problems in the society, by seeing the difficulties in the society, they are coming with a new ideas and they wanted to have a constitutions in Russia, and that is the reasons they tried to have a new constitutions by 1905. And when they tried to have, or when they demanded to have the constitutions, during that time these social democrats as well as the socialist revolutionaries, they were supported by the nationalist jihadists, because the nationalist jihadists were also trying to have modernize in Muslim societies. That is why when these social democrats as well as the socialist revolutionaries were trying to bring changes in the society, it was supported by both nationalists as well as the jihadists. And during that time we see it in Russia, many of the peoples were not at all happy with the monarchy systems, because the monarchy was not at all concerns about the peoples, not at all concerns about the development of the society, and that is the reasons they wanted to bring a new system of governance in the society. They wanted to bring a changes in the society. They wanted to have a parliamentary systems in the society. They wanted to limit the powers of the monarchy. So my dear children, when they tried to have the new systems in the society, before that we see that in 1904 there was very bad situations in Russia. And what was the bad situations which forced people to start the revolutions in Russia? There are certain situations which created a lot of problems in the society, and because of those problems and difficulties, the peoples, they started revolutions in 1905 and they wanted to limit the powers of the monarchy, because monarchy was subject to power. He was the one who is having unlimited power, and during the most crisis time he was not at all saying anything to the industrialists. The industrialists were continuously exploiting the peoples. During that time also the Tsar Nicholas II was not at all saying anything to them, and because of that reasons the peoples were really feeling bad about that. And dear children, let us very briefly discuss what was the bad conditions that was found during the 1904. The first things which we notice here is the price rate of essential goods which began to rise very quickly. And the second problems the people faced in Russia was the real wages, which was declined by 20%. So what was the most difficult crisis which the peoples were facing in 1904? The most common crisis was the increasing of price rate, and the second one is the real wages which came down or which was declined by 20%. So here the peoples are facing lot of problems. And what was the problem first? The price rate is increasing very rapidly. At the same time, the wages was declining by 20%, and due to that peoples were not able to lead a very normal life. They were not at all able to lead a very happy life, and that is the reasons the peoples were dissatisfied with the king or the emperor Tsar Nicholas II. And during that time we see the increasing of the members in the associations, and apart from that there was 4 workers who were removed from the iron works. And when the workers were these 4 workers were removed from the iron work, during that time there was a great crisis which happened in Russia. And when these workers were removed from the industry, during that time there was a industrial actions, and the peoples, they started feeling very bad about the working situations in the industry. Already, my dear children, I have told you that the price rate is increasing, the wages is declining by 20%, and at the same time peoples were removed from the industries. And when such kind of situations happen in Russia, within a very few days, nearly 1,10,000 workers, what they did, they kept on doing the strikes here. So here, within a very few days, we see that nearly 1,10,000 workers, they came out and they started doing strike here. And when they started doing strike here, what was the demands here? They were demanding to reduce the working hour. Because during that time, dear children, we understand that the working hour was very long. It was nearly 14 to 15 hours. So here, the workers, why they are doing strike here? In order to have the better working conditions, in order to reduce the working hour, and they wanted to make it as 8 hours, and at the same time, they wanted to improve their wages here. They wanted to increase their wages here. They wanted to improve the working conditions here. And due to all these factors, we see the worker, they kept on doing the strikes in Russia. So dear children, when the strikes was happened, what was the real changes which happened in Russia, we shall be discussing now. So dear children, there was more problem in industry, and the industries were exploiting the worker, but the Tsar Nicholas II was not saying anything to the industrialists, and that is the reasons the peoples were not at all happy with the kings, and they started the revolutions, and the revolutions was happening in Russia more time. So dear children, and when the revolutions was happened, we see under the leadership of Father Gapon, the processions was made, the strike was made, and they went towards the Winter Palace. And when they went towards the Winter Palace, the king Tsar Nicholas II, he did not tolerate the strikes of the worker. So what he did was, he ordered the police as well as the special police to attack the peoples. And when there was an attack on the peoples, nearly 100 workers as well as 300 workers were killed and 300 workers were badly wounded here. So dear children, because of this series of events, it is known as these Bloody Sunday. Because of these incidents, because of the incident of killing peoples, it is known as the Bloody Sunday. So during the periods of 1905, there were so many series of revolutions which was happened in Russia, which happened all around the nations, and when it was happened in Russia, it is called the 1905 revolutions, because there was a series of events, there was a series of different kind of events that happened in Russia. That is why it is known as the 1905 revolutions. My dear children, when the peoples were killed, again the revolutions becomes very active in the society. Again the strikes which was happened all around the nations, it was happened all around the nations, and at the same time the universities were closed down. The students, they made the unions, they made the students' bodies, and they work out. And during that time, many peoples in the societies, they were started complaining about the lack of civil liberties, because there was no freedom in the society. There was no civil liberty. There was no freedom given to the citizens, and that is what the peoples were complaining to the ruler, that is known as the Tsar Nicholas II. My dear children, in spite of that, we see the involvement of the lawyers, the doctors, the workers. What they did was they established different kind of unions, and they kept on demanding to have the Constituent Assembly, so that there will be the framing of the constitutions. Here we see many peoples, the common peoples like different middle classes peoples, the lawyers, the doctors, the workers, the students, all of them were not happy with the Tsar Nicholas, because during that time of kings, the ruler, there was no liberty, there was no freedom, there was no equality, there was no good systems in the society, and due to that, peoples there kept on demanding to have the Constituent Assembly, so that when the law will be there, when constitutions will be there, when parliaments will be there, peoples will fight for their rights. And that is the reasons the revolutions is happening in Russia, so that there will be changes in the society, there will be the parliamentary systems in the society, there will be the constitutions in the society. That is the reasons people kept on demanding to have the Constituent Assembly. So my dear children, when the revolutions was continuously happening in all around the nations, all around Russia, when peoples were keep on demanding, during that time finally the Tsar Nicholas II, he allowed to have the parliamentary systems. So my dear children, as in my previous videos lectures, I have told you that there were many associations, there were many workers' party in Russia, but most of the associations, trade unions, all these were considered as illegal political associations. But after the 1905 revolutions, all these trade unions were considered or declared as legal. And when these trade associations were considered or declared as legal, during that time, in spite of giving status to the political associations, the kings who made severe restrictions on the political activity. So the parliamentary systems which came into being, there was a Duma, there was a parliament. After the revolutions of 05, because we see the middle classes, the lawyers, the doctors, the students, the peoples who are keep on fighting for the liberty, who are keep on fighting for the new systems, who are keep on fighting for the new constitutions, who are demanding to have the limitations of the king's power. And when the revolutions was continuously happening, my dear children, at last in 1905, the king Tsar Nicholas II, he agreed to the demands of the peoples, and there was a parliamentary systems. And while the new Duma were created, then we see the representatives there. But what the king, the Sir Nicholas did was, he do not want to reduce his power, he do not want to limit his power. That is the reason within a period of 75 days, he rejected the Duma and he sided with the conservative politicians, and he removed the liberal as well as the radical politicians, and he was sided with these he was sided with these conservative political leaders, and within a periods of 3 months they created a new Duma. They created a new parliament in Russia. So my dear children, as I was trying to tell you about the 1905 revolutions. So in this 1905 revolutions, we see when peoples they started doing protesting against the kings, we see different kind of changes that took place in Russia, and the most important changes was there was a Duma, or there was a parliament. Even though the parliament was cancelled by the Tsar Nicholas II and he created a new Duma, in spite of that also we see the new system of governance which came into being in Russia. So my dear children, as we know that before 1905 there was a very bad situations in Russia, because the power was resting in one particular person, that is the king himself, and when the power was resting on him, the demands was not fulfilled in the nations. That is the reasons peoples were not at all happy with the kings, not at all happy with the emperor, and they started the revolutions in 1905. And that is why because of the series of revolutions happens in Russia, it is known as the 1905 revolutions, because the peoples they noticed the problems in Russia and they started revolting and protesting against the ruler to bring changes in Russia. So my dear children, thank you so much for listening to me.